when my dad and stepmom packed their bags to go on vacation with their perfect little daughter and left me behind like I didn't even exist, I decided this time would be different. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Emily. I live with my dad, Mark, my stepmom, Susan, and their daughter, Lily, who is my half-sister. From the outside, we look like one big happy family, but inside the house, it never felt that way. I always felt like the extra piece that didn't fit. They treated me more like a guest than part of the family, and most days, like I wasn't even welcome in my own home. When they started planning a family trip, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd be included this time. I overheard them talking about hotels, flights, and beaches, and for a moment, I let myself hope. But then I found out the truth. They told me there wasn't enough room, that things would be easier if I stayed behind. Susan said it so casually, like I was just luggage they couldn't carry. Dad stood next to her and nodded like it made sense. No fight, no defense, no second thought. I stood there smiling, pretending it was fine, but inside I felt like my chest was caving in. I remembered all the other times I had been left out. Birthdays where Lily got all the attention, holidays where my gifts were an afterthought, nights when my dad chose to sit with Susan and Lily while I ate alone at the table. It was always the same. I was the shadow in the background, tolerated but never loved. The night before they left, I walked past their room and heard Susan laughing with my dad. She said, "She's too much baggage anyway. This trip will be so much better without her." My dad didn't argue. He laughed with her. That laugh hit harder than any slap could. It told me exactly where I stood in his heart, nowhere. The next morning, I watched them load the car. Lily was buzzing with excitement, holding her stuffed bunny and talking about how fun the beach would be. Susan fussed over her, fixing her hair and kissing her forehead like she was the center of the world. My dad carried the bags, looking proud, like he was taking his perfect little family on an adventure. And me? I stood at the door, holding a $10 bill Susan had tossed my way for food. No hug, no goodbye. Just a quick wave like I was the neighbor's kid watching them head out. As they drove off, the car disappearing down the street, I felt something inside me break. But right behind that pain was something else, something sharper. I wasn't going to just sit there and cry this time. If they thought they could treat me like I didn't exist, I'd make sure they realized exactly who I was. That night, I was walking past the kitchen when I heard voices. I wasn't trying to listen, but the words stopped me cold. Susan's voice was sharp, full of irritation. She said, "She's too much baggage, Mark. She's not worth the effort." I froze, waiting, hoping for my dad to speak up for me. For once in my life, I needed him to defend me. But instead of anger, instead of love, all I heard was laughter. His laughter. Not nervous, not uncomfortable, real laughter like he agreed. I pressed my hand against the wall, trying to steady myself. It was one thing to feel unwanted, but it was another to hear it out loud. I'd always carried this secret wish that maybe I was imagining things, that maybe deep down they did care. But in that moment, the truth settled heavy in my chest. I wasn't family. I wasn't anything more than a problem they had to deal with. Memories started rushing back faster than I could stop them. Times when Susan asked me to scrub the floors while Lily played outside. Times when my dad watched without saying a word as Susan handed me her laundry like I was the maid. Times when Lily climbed into Dad's lap while I stood in the corner, invisible, waiting for someone to notice me. I used to think if I worked harder, if I did everything right, they might look at me the way they looked at her. But now I knew it was never about me not trying hard enough. It was about them never wanting me. I felt the kitchen tile cold beneath my bare feet, my heart hammering against my ribs. I should have walked away, but my body wouldn't move. Their voices went on, quiet enough that I couldn't catch every word, but I didn't need to. The damage was done. The cruel part wasn't Susan's insult. It was that my dad didn't push back. He didn't say, "Don't talk about her like that." He didn't remind her that I was his daughter. He didn't say anything at all. His silence cut deeper than her words, because it confirmed what I feared most. He had chosen his side, and it wasn't mine. Something in me hardened right there in the hallway. I felt my eyes sting, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I let the hurt turn sharp, pressing into me like glass. I had been used, ignored, and brushed aside for as long as I could remember. But now I had proof. I wasn't imagining the distance. I wasn't paranoid. I had heard it, clear as day. I wasn't worth the effort. That sentence carved itself into me. It burned, but it also lit something inside me. Their betrayal wasn't just casual neglect anymore. It was deliberate. And I wasn't going to let it stay buried. Not this time. The morning sun was barely up when I heard the car doors slam. I stood at the window, arms crossed, watching as they packed the last of their bags. Lily bounced with excitement, clutching her beach toys, while Susan adjusted her sunglasses like she was heading for some glamorous getaway. My dad carried the cooler, gave a quick glance toward the house, and then turned away. Not once did he wave. Not once did he look for me. When the car pulled out of the driveway, I stared at the crumpled bills Susan had tossed onto the counter. A few dollars, as if that was enough to cover days of being left alone. It wasn't kindness, it was a reminder. I wasn't part of their plans, only an afterthought to keep fed while they enjoyed themselves. The house fell silent the second they were gone. No footsteps, no chatter, no Lily calling for attention. Just silence that pressed in on me from every wall. I wandered into the kitchen, opening the fridge. Everything worth eating was gone, packed neatly in coolers for their trip. The pantry door had a new lock, one Susan must have added just for me. The shelves I could see through the crack were lined with snacks and treats, things Lily would snack on without thought. For me, there was nothing but stale bread and an old jar of peanut butter. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, running my hand along the edges of furniture that never felt like mine. In the living room, the TV remote was missing, tucked away so I wouldn't waste electricity. In their bedroom, drawers were pulled shut tight, every personal item hidden, as though I might break into their world if they left anything behind. Even the thermostat was locked, the key dangling from Susan's keychain in the purse she had taken with her. Each little barrier built by their hands reminded me of where I stood in this house. Not a daughter, not a sister, just someone occupying space. I thought of the way Susan always smiled when she called me responsible, how she praised me for helping out. But standing in the empty rooms, I saw it clearly. I wasn't being praised. I was being used. The loneliness sank deep, but it didn't stay quiet. It twisted into something hotter, heavier. Anger rose in me, filling the emptiness they left behind. I paced through the hallways, every locked door and hidden thing adding fuel to the fire. They thought they could strip the house bare, leave me with scraps, and I'd just accept it. But as I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the empty driveway, a thought pressed into my mind and refused to leave. I couldn't keep letting them treat me like this. If they wanted to forget me, I would make sure they remembered. I sat on the edge of my bed, the silence pressing in until my chest ached. My eyes drifted to the photo tucked inside my drawer, one I kept hidden because Susan once told me not to cling to the past. It was of my mom, her arms wrapped tight around me, both of us laughing in a way that felt like the whole world belonged to us. She was gone before I even had the chance to grow up, taken by illness when I was 10. I still remember the hospital room, the way her hand felt warm but weak in mine. She whispered that she loved me, and I believed her because with her, love was real. Not long after she was buried, everything shifted. My dad, desperate not to be alone, brought Susan into our lives. It happened so fast it made my head spin. One day the house still carried the scent of my mom's perfume, and the next it was replaced by Susan's heavy floral candles. She walked through the rooms like she owned them, rearranging furniture, packing away my mom's belongings, erasing every trace of her. The changes didn't stop with the house. My room, once a space filled with my mom's touches, was stripped down. Susan decided Lily needed more space, so walls were repainted and furniture moved until my world was squeezed into the smallest bedroom. I wasn't asked. I wasn't considered. I was told. My toys were boxed up, and anything that reminded me of my mom disappeared overnight. I remember sitting in that tiny room, listening to laughter spill from the bigger bedroom down the hall. Lily's giggles mixed with my dad's voice, while Susan cooed over her, like she was the only child in the world. That sound became my lullaby, a reminder that I no longer belonged in the heart of the family. I was outside the door, listening to a life I wasn't part of. Susan never missed a chance to remind me how little I mattered. When I asked why Lily had more, she smiled with that sharp edge in her voice and said, "You're lucky you even have a roof." The word stung every time. Lucky. As if the bare minimum of shelter was a gift I should bow my head over. She made it clear I should be grateful for scraps, grateful for being tolerated. But it wasn't just her cruelty, it was my dad's silence. He let it happen. He let my room shrink, let my things vanish, let Susan's words bruise me again and again. And each time he looked away, a piece of me broke. The man who was supposed to protect me chose comfort with his new wife over the daughter standing right in front of him. The grief for my mom never left, but now it mixed with something darker. It wasn't just loss anymore, it was betrayal. My father didn't just move on. He abandoned me while staying in the same house. I sat at the kitchen table and let my anger settle into something useful. Tears had come and gone, but they didn't fix anything. If I wanted them to feel the same sharp emptiness I'd been carrying, I needed a plan that mattered. I didn't want to hurt anyone's body. I wanted the truth to land where it would shake them the most, where appearances and money met. That was where their safety lived, and I could reach it. First I waited until the house was quiet, every laugh and step out of earshot. I moved slowly through rooms I had been taught not to enter, fingers steady, mind clear. I started with the closet in their bedroom because that was the place of hidden things. Extra wallets, bags, small boxes that never belonged to me. I opened drawers that smelled like perfume and found stacks of receipts folded tight like secrets. The numbers and store names blurred at first, then snapped into meaning. There were charges for nights away, expensive jewelry, and hotels I had never heard my father mention. I didn't panic. I copied details, wrote dates in a little notebook, and tucked originals into a safe place where no one would think to look. Next, I climbed into the attic and pulled down a plastic bin filled with paper, bills, envelopes with bank logos, and statements with balances that made my stomach drop. Someone had been moving money around. There were bank cards with another name on the back, a set of keys to a safety deposit box, and a business card with a manager's name. Each new item sketched a shape I hadn't expected. She had a financial life built in the shadows. I started to understand how she had reshaped our home. Those late-night purchases weren't small luxuries. They were part of a pattern. I found a stack of membership invoices and subscriptions that explained her constant treats for Lily. There were also hotel receipts that matched dates when my father claimed he was working. The quiet betrayal cut deeper when I realized he knew enough to ignore these things. Careful was the word I kept repeating. I photographed pages with my phone, saved copies on an old flash drive I found in a junk drawer, and organized everything by month. I didn't want to burn bridges that might let them accuse me of making things up. I needed proof someone could hold up in front of him and not be dismissed. As I worked, my resentment shifted into a cold focus. This was no longer only about a lost childhood or a cramped room. It was about the lies that let them pass their choices off as normal. The evidence began to look like a map out of my helplessness, an actual set of facts I could use when the moment came. When I finally sat back, the pile of paper and plastic by my side felt like a small victory. I wasn't the powerless kid they'd left behind with a few crumpled bills. I had something they didn't expect me to have, knowledge. That knowledge could change everything. I thought I had uncovered enough, but something kept pushing me further. The papers and cards were damaging, yes, but they weren't personal. They showed greed, secrecy, money moving in the dark. But I wanted something that couldn't be brushed off as careless spending. I needed something that would slice through the mask Susan wore every day, something that would make my dad stop looking the other way. I searched places I had never dared to touch before. A shoebox, shoved far back on the highest shelf of the closet, caught my eye. The lid was taped shut, like it wasn't meant to be opened. My hands shook as I peeled it back, but once I looked inside, the tremor faded into ice. Letters, neatly folded, each one starting with a name I didn't recognize, written in a handwriting that wasn't my father's. Words spilled across the pages, full of promises and longing. He called her beautiful. He talked about nights they'd shared, places they'd meet again, plans for a future. And the name he signed with wasn't Mark. I pressed the papers flat on the floor, skimming faster and faster. Dates at the top matched weekends I remembered her being out with friends. She hadn't been at dinner those nights, hadn't been home until late. Now I knew why. I dug deeper into the box. There were hotel receipts tucked inside, matching the cities written in the letters. Some had room numbers circled, with initials scribbled in the margin. Then came the photographs. My stomach turned when I saw them. Susan, smiling in a way I had never seen in our house, leaning against a man who wasn't my dad. His arm wrapped tight around her waist, her head tilted against his shoulder. The images were grainy, taken with a cheap camera, but they screamed louder than any words could. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I felt anger spread through me, steady and sure. She had spent years telling me I was lucky to be here, treating me like an outsider in my own home, while she was the one sneaking around, tearing apart the family she claimed to care for. She had fooled my father, and he had let himself believe her. I stacked the evidence carefully, making copies of every letter and photo, every receipt with dates and locations. I organized them the same way I had done with the financial record, building a story no one could deny. Each page I copied felt like another piece of armor, a shield against all the years of being dismissed. By the time I finished, I had more than just scraps of proof. I had the weapon I needed. Not something loud or violent, but something undeniable. I wasn't going to hide it forever. When the moment was right, I would put it in front of my dad in a way he couldn't laugh off, couldn't ignore, couldn't explain away. The perfect picture Susan had painted was going to shatter, and I was the one holding the hammer. The sound of tires on gravel pulled me to the front window. Their car rolled into the driveway, bright with luggage strapped to the top, and doors swung open with laughter pouring. Lily hopped out first, skin darker from days in the sun, her hair braided with beads that clicked together as she moved. She held a seashell in her hand like it was treasure. Susan stepped out next, stretching, sunglasses perched on her head, her lips curled into a satisfied smile. My dad followed, hauling bags, his skin red from the beach, but his mood light. They looked like a postcard, the image of happiness, as if I had never existed. I stayed in the hallway, out of sight, watching them walk in. The scent of sunscreen and salt still clung to their clothes. Lily darted past me without a glance, running to her room to unpack her souvenirs. My father brushed by, not even meeting my eyes, as though I were a piece of furniture. Susan paused just long enough to give me a once-over before wrinkling her nose. "This place doesn't look right," she said, setting her purse down. Her voice carried that sharp edge I knew too well. "The counters aren't spotless. The air feels stuffy. Honestly, Emily, it's not that hard to keep things in order." My jaw clenched. I had scrubbed every corner, washed the floors until my hands burned, made sure the house was neater than when they left. But her eyes searched for flaws, and where none existed, she created them. She wanted me to feel small, careless, useless. I didn't give her the satisfaction of answering. I lowered my gaze and stayed silent. My father reappeared with a small paper bag in his hand. He crouched down in front of Lily, pulling out a bracelet woven with bright threads. "Look what I got for you," he said, his voice warm, pride shining in his eyes. She squealed, sliding it onto her wrist, jumping into his arms. For me, there was nothing. No trinket, no token, not even a word. His hands were empty when he stood, his smile already gone as he turned away. The absence spoke louder than anything he could have said. In that moment, it felt like they had gone to another world and returned carrying proof of their happiness, while I was left with air. I stayed rooted to the spot, my fingernails digging into my palm. I wanted to scream, to remind him I was standing right there, but instead I swallowed the sting and held on to the silence. Every cruel glance, every ignored moment, every missing gift built a wall inside me. They laughed as they carried their bags upstairs, voices filling the house like I was never part of it. I followed with my eyes, not my steps, holding myself back. My time wasn't now. The proof I had gathered waited for its moment, and when it came, none of them would be able to pretend I was invisible again. The clatter of silverware echoed against the quiet hum of the dining room. Plates of food sat untouched in front of me, though I had cooked them carefully, measuring every spice just right. My dad sat at the head of the table, Susan beside him, and Lily chattered about the ocean while swinging her legs under her chair. They acted as though nothing was wrong, as though I wasn't sitting across from them with the weight of their lies burning in my pocket. I waited until Lily paused to sip her water. Then I reached down, slid a thick envelope from under my chair, and set it squarely in the middle of the table. The sound of paper against would cut the air clean. My father looked up, puzzled, while Susan's eyes flickered with the kind of unease she tried to hide behind a smile. "Since you thought I wasn't part of this family," I said, my voice steady, "maybe you should see what your real family has been up to." I pushed the stack forward. Receipts slid free, photos spilling across the tablecloth, letters unfolding themselves with dates and name. My dad's fork froze midair. His eyes darted over hotel headers, handwriting not his own, images of his wife in someone else's arm. The color drained from his face. Susan gave a short laugh, too high-pitched, too quick. "This is ridiculous," she said, reaching for the papers. "She's been snooping around, making up stories. You can't believe this." But he didn't stop staring. His fingers trembled as he picked up one of the photographs, holding it closer as though distance might change what he saw. His lips moved, but no words came. Lily looked from one face to another, her smile gone. "Mom, Dad, what's happening?" she asked, her small voice shaking. She tried to reach for her mother's arm, but Susan pulled it back, eyes darting everywhere but her husband's face. The air grew heavier with every second. My father turned to Susan, his jaw tight, his voice low but sharp. "Is this true?" Susan tried again to laugh, to wave it off. "Mark, come on. She's twisting things. You know how dramatic she can be." But the evidence spread across the table betrayed her. Every page, every line, every image told the same story, and no performance could erase it. Lily whimpered, confused tears gathering as she clutched the bracelet on her wrist like it might protect her from the storm breaking around. My dad slammed his hand down on the table, rattling the plates. The sound jolted even Susan, who sat frozen, lips parted but silent now. I stayed still, my eyes locked on him. I didn't need to say anything more. The truth was already screaming between us, louder than I ever could. And for the first time, he couldn't pretend not to hear it. The room erupted the moment silence broke. My father shoved the papers back toward Susan, his voice rising in a way I had never heard before. "How long has this been going on?" he demanded, his face flushed, his hands gripping the table hard enough to rattle the dishes. Susan's eyes darted, searching for footing. She straightened her shoulders and pointed across the table at me. "She's the problem here, Mark. She's been snooping through our things, digging where she doesn't belong. You're really going to take her side after she invaded our privacy." But her words fell flat against the weight of the photographs, the receipts, the letters scattered between them. My father slammed one of the hotel's slips onto the table. "This isn't her handwriting," he barked. "These charges aren't her doing. Don't you dare try to turn this on Emily." Susan's mouth opened, but no excuses came fast enough. She shifted, stammered, tried to weave a story, but every attempt unraveled the second it left her lip. My father pressed harder, his voice breaking between rage and disbelief. "All this time, you let me sit at this table, let me build a life with you, while you were with someone else." Lily sat frozen, her wide eyes flicking between them, too young to understand, but old enough to feel the tension tearing the room apart. She whispered, "Mom," but Susan didn't answer. Her focus stayed locked on my father, scrambling for anything that might patch a hole too large to cover. The wall between them began to crack in real time. My father's words grew sharper, his questions more direct. He wanted dates, explanations, reasons, but none came. Susan tried to deflect, accusing him of neglect, of being blind, of letting me stir the pot, but each deflection only deepened the fissure. I sat back, hands folded in my lap, saying nothing. I didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't interfere. I just watched. For years I had been invisible, dismissed, treated like excess. Now the spotlight was fixed on the truth, and no one could look away. Inside me, two feelings wrestled for space. A sharp satisfaction hummed as I saw Susan's mask crumble, her confidence wither under proof she couldn't erase. She had called me a burden, treated me like a guest in my own home, and now the lie she built was collapsing around her. But alongside that satisfaction was a hollow ache. My father's voice cracked as he shouted, and in that break I heard something deeper. A man realizing too late what he had ignored, what he had chosen not to see. His pain wasn't mine, but it still pulled at me. This wasn't only revenge, it was the cost of being noticed. That night, their marriage began to fall apart at the same table where I had so often sat in silence. And for the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. Days after that night, the house no longer felt the same. Voices that once filled the rooms had quieted into sharp exchanges behind closed doors. My father and Susan stopped eating together, stopped moving in rhythm like they used to. She spent hours on the phone in hushed tones, and he drifted through the house like a man carrying weight too heavy to name. The divide grew wider each day until it was impossible to ignore. Suitcases appeared by the front door one evening. Susan packed in silence, her lips pressed into a thin line. She avoided my father's eyes and didn't glance in my direction at all. Lily clung to her, confused, not understanding why her mother's things were being carried out to the car. My father stood rigid, his face carved with disappointment, but he didn't stop her. He just let her go. When the door shut behind them, the echo felt like a chapter closing. The house felt hollow, but different this time. For once, I wasn't the one left behind. My father lingered near me more often, his steps hesitant, his words careful. One evening, he sat across from me, his shoulders bent. "I should have protected you," he said quietly, not looking me in the eye. The weight of his guilt filled the space between us. I didn't rush to comfort him. Years of neglect couldn't be erased with a single apology. I listened, my arms folded, letting his shame sit where it belonged. Forgiveness wasn't something I could hand over easily, and he seemed to know it. But beneath the hardness in me, a shift stirred. He saw me now. He couldn't unsee me again. Life settled into a quieter rhythm. Meals at the table were smaller, the air less crowded, and though awkwardness lingered, there was also space for me. My father asked about my day, lingered to hear the answer, and sometimes caught himself staring at me with a mix of regret and recognition. I wasn't ready to give him warmth, but I wasn't invisible anymore. Late one night, I wandered into the room that once belonged to my mother. Dust clung to the windowsills, and the faint scent of her perfume lingered like a memory that refused to fade. I ran my hand along the dresser where her brush used to sit, the mirror reflecting a version of me that no longer felt like the forgotten child. I stood there in the stillness, the house around me both broken and waiting to heal. My revenge hadn't been about tearing everything down. It had been about forcing the truth into the light, making the people who had cast me aside finally face what they had done. Susan's mask had shattered, and my father could no longer pretend. For the first time in years, I felt like the walls of the house recognized. I wasn't an intruder, wasn't a shadow. I belonged here, and standing in my mother's old room, I knew I had finally reclaimed what was mine. Do you think I made the right choice by exposing everything, or should I have stayed quiet and given them another chance? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more.